Simple, companies are as ready as their leaders are, as their employees are. So it really depends on the leaders, and I really consciously I'm saying leaders and not all employees, because it starts from the top. It has to start from the top. Otherwise, it remains to be a struggle if a BRG or a ERG is starting things. I mean, it is very important, but it has to start from the top so that people know that it's important to be diverse and inclusive, and it is in the benefit of business that we need to be diverse and inclusive.
Hi guys, welcome to It's Quite Simple. Thank you so much for taking out the time to have this conversation, and that too on a weekday. I'm very grateful for that. This today's topic that I chose really does come from a personal experience. As you know, I was also just discussing with Rajesh Prachi, is that I also come from, I've been working with ad agencies for 11 years now. Last year, I took the plunge and I started working on my own. But the kind of there were a lot of toxic elements that I faced, but diversity and inclusion being something that I didn't even understand what it means still for a long, long time. And I'm sure there's so many people who don't. Unless you're working in an MNC where there's like, proper procedures put together in place, a lot of people are not even aware what does the whole idea of this means. What does it mean to include people from diverse backgrounds, sexualities, communities, genders, all of that, and what does it mean for the organization as well as the employee. The idea of this podcast is to talk about the effect of what happens in organizations to individuals if they're not being represented properly in an organization. How does it impact the mental health? What kind of culture does it end up creating?
Yeah.
Not going to wait any longer. I'm just going to start off, talking about this. But first, I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves. Either if we can start, and from there, then we can start off the questions.
Would you like to start, Rajesh?
Sure. So, Symbol, thank you so much for this opportunity. As I've already told you, I'm super excited to have this chat with you and Prachi, and looking forward to some really interesting conversation. To start with, I lead the executive search vertical for Penpa Group India. Prior to that, almost a decade of an experience having worked in the similar industry and financial services. And by the passion area, inclusion and diversity come extremely closer to my heart. And this is one crusade that I wanted to have my attention, my time, and platforms like these gives me an opportunity to voice my thought and maybe share and collaborate with interesting partners like Prachi. So over to you now.
Thank you, Rajesh. So, Symbol, here I am. First of all, really happy to be sharing space with you and talking about this important subject. I do diversity and inclusion for IBM in Asia Pacific. I lead it there. And it's been a very interesting journey in the last 4 years that I've been doing D&I. Before that, I was an HR business partner in various units at IBM and a few other companies. Uh, I love the role currently because it it changes me as a human being. I wake up to my own biases and do bring a positive change in other people's life, people within IBM and people outside of IBM. And that is what makes it beautiful for me.
That's lovely, lovely. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. And like I said, that all of us seem to have not just been working on this at a professional capacity, but understanding what it means. Perhaps having faced it at some level, perhaps seeing others face it at some level, and feeling for it personally. And I think that's why I was really looking forward to the kind of contributions that you guys will bring to this conversation. I'm going to start off with the first question, and I wanted to keep it very, very basic because while we are speaking about this, there are so many people, and I get listeners from so many different age groups, so many different demographics, and I wanted them to understand what does it really mean when you say diversity and inclusion. It's a word that we keep hearing. A lot of people hear it when they join a new organization, but what does it really mean? So in your opinion, if you were to like sort of just simplify it for someone hearing it, you know, what would you, how would you make them understand in the simplest of terms?
Is that a question for
Any one
me?
of you can start.
Oh,
I
all
am,
right.
that's it. Both of you can answer it. Yeah.
I'll take a dig at it. Diversity for me is being open to different ideas, different phases of your own life. So, inclusion, diversity really starts with me as a human being. Unless I'm really inclusive of myself, I can never be inclusive of the other. It is really lip service. If I don't have time for myself, I can never take out time for the other. And being open and accepting of everything that goes inside me. Not everything is positive, there are many dark sides too. So, being accepting of those dark side too, those diverse sides of me, including it, is diversity and inclusion. What I do to me is what I do to others at the end of the day. So the same formula applies when I see people who are different from me, people who have different ideas, people who are different genders, people who believe in things that I don't believe in, how I embrace them, how I show compassion or love or warmth to them is inclusion. And inclusion is the mother of diversity. So wherever you have an inclusive environment, you find diversity flourishing.
How beautifully put, Prachi. Thank you so much. What about you, Rajesh?
I think building on to the eloquence of what Prachi just said, diverse and inclusive workforce is the one that makes everyone, regardless of who they are, what they do for the business, feel equally involved and supported in all areas of the workplace. She briefly highlighted upon the lip servicing. I think building on to that, I genuinely believe that diversity without inclusion is tokenism. Diversity and inclusion are two interconnected concepts, but they are far from interchangeable. Diversity focuses on the representation or the makeup of an entity. Inclusion is about how well the contribution, the presence, the perspective of different groups of people are valued and integrated into the environment or an organization. I think, and I remember one of my favorite quotes from Vane Myris, which she beautifully puts up, where she says, "Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance." So that's, according to me, is diversity and inclusion.
That's so true. That's so true. That's very aptly put, and that makes a lot of sense. That, you know, in a lot of cases, maybe diversity and inclusion is just numbers, but actually, what is happening on the ground level? You know, how are they represented? Especially, like I was telling you, that I work in ad agencies. You know, when we think of an idea, imagine if that same idea could come with like five different minds coming from five different backgrounds, the kind of richness that it brings to that, to any solution really, the kind of richness that a diverse background brings completely changes the game. And and I think that's something a lot of people miss in terms of you know, understanding, which really does bring me to the next question, you know, wherein that a lot of us feel that diversity and inclusion is important only for employees, but it does play a very big role for the employer as well, right? For a company's growth, how does a diverse background, a diverse hiring, you know, people in management roles that come from different walks of life, they do add a different edge to the same solution. The uniformity that we've built in bringing the same kind of people together is sort of cut out with a different diverse group. So how do you think that, you know, a company benefits from a diverse environment? Like, we speak of the employee, of course, benefiting from it, having a voice, but I really wanted to also shed light and for people to understand uh, that it's as important for a company to have, you know, a diverse group of employees. Then how does it really impact them?
Okay, Symbol, I'll again start. It is a big business imperative for any company to be diverse and inclusive. It is not just a human imperative. It is a very, very important business imperative. Why? Because you can only create innovative, intelligent solutions for your client if you have diversity in the team. Otherwise, if you have the same kind of people looking the same, sounding the same, they'll bring the same solutions every time. And which client doesn't want innovation today? Which client doesn't want to know people from different backgrounds who understand them fully? Not one kind of people will understand the client fully. And therefore, the more diverse you are, the more inclusive you are, you can be better placed in terms of revenue, profitability, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and thus success and growth. So it's actually very much a business agenda. And companies are not doing any favor on marginalized communities or to get more gender balance at the top by bringing in more women or LGBTQ plus people or people with disabilities. It's in the interest of organizations to do this. It's in the interest of humanity to do this.
For sure. It is in the interest of humanity to do it. And then comes the employer-employee dynamics. What do you think, Rajesh?
I think Simple, when I was learning about this podcast, I wanted to dig deeper into some statistics, and I did a bit of a research, and I wanted to corroborate the benefits of diverse and inclusive workplace with some numbers. Having said that, what Prachi just highlighted, high revenue growth, high profitability is inevitable if in case you get a lot of diverse people on board. It also makes organizations very ready to innovate. It gives, now when I work in an industry where I happen to work with a lot of leaders in extremely close quarters, uh, it helps them attract better talent when there's diversity and inclusion on board. It increases employee engagement and trust. One of the research that I happen to land myself onto suggests that employee retention is 5.4 times higher when there's a diverse and inclusive workforce in an organization. Employees tend to have approximately 9 times more likely to look forward to the work or the engagement they are put into, or the assignments that they'll be working upon. 6 times more likely to have pride in their work. So this helps them in retention, attraction of the talent, and inevitably it leads to better organization and revenues and the profitability.
Yes, it absolutely does. And like you said, the productivity, because the employees feel much more motivated to be a part of the culture which accepts them and represents them, and they're able to participate fully, and not just the those tick mark hires that there are in a company, but as important and as valuable a part of the system. Uh, when I was in one of the agencies, I remember that I had to shout so loud to be able to talk in a room full of men, to be very honest. That I was the only I was not even leading a team, obviously, but uh, I would always have my ideas put across, and it didn't, to be very honest, it didn't occur to me what it meant back then. I was much younger, but I was like, am I saying something wrong that I'm not being heard? But then I didn't realize that there's so many other roles playing a part, in the background. But there was like a group, like a conference full of like men, and I was sitting there, and I was the only woman. And when I was speaking to one of the guy, he just pointed at me. He said like, wait for a turn, something of that sort. And and I kept thinking about it later in the night. So what I mean is that for me, had I not been someone who would have perhaps understood, read on it, I would have all my life thought that maybe my ideas are not as good enough to be spoken out in a room, or maybe I need to speak like they do, or I need to perhaps have a position like they do to be able to have a point of view. And I think that did change a lot for me. Then after that, I made sure that at least when I am hiring, my team is a mix of people from all walks of life. uh, and I think I'm just putting in these small experiences, for people to understand that when they go through something like this, it it does impact the self confidence a lot in a lot of places, and it has nothing to do with who you are as a person, but someone's idea of where you come from. And I think that's the shift, that is what we're trying to sort of work towards. uh, that gets me thinking, you know do you guys feel that in India, because India, of course, there's diversity all across the world, but in India itself, there are so many ethnicities, cultures. There's so much diversity. Do you think that companies at present, in their present capacity, are well equipped, uh, uh, you know, to deal with diversity and inclusion? And uh, do you think that we are at that space? Of course, there's always room for improvement. There always will be. But at what stage do you think we're in? And I'm talking about it from a perspective of, obviously, MNCs being a completely different ball game, and the smaller, companies being very different, because there they're trying to survive, let alone, forget about like putting things into place where they want to like sort of create an inclusive environment or an enabling environment. But even in that capacity, do you think that where do companies in India at least lie in terms of uh, diversity and inclusion as an important aspect of their culture building?
Simple, companies are as ready as their leaders are, as their employees are. So it really depends on the leaders, and I really consciously I'm saying leaders and not all employees, because it starts from the top. It has to start from the top. Otherwise, it remains to be a struggle if a BRG or a ERG is starting things. I mean, it is very important, but it has to start from the top so that people know that it's important to be diverse and inclusive, and it is in the benefit of business that we need to be diverse and inclusive. So doesn't matter how diverse India is as a country, different ethnicities, different castes, different religions, different languages. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if you're open to diversity and you know how to harness the beauty of diversity, because we have to remember that it is always more easier to work in a very homogeneous group. If I'm working with people who are just like me, it'll be much easier. It'll be inconvenient to work in a diverse team, but it'll be more beneficial at the end of the day. It'll be more richer, because you will create better products, services, and solutions for your clients. And that is why it's important. So a leader has to be really inclusive so that you harness the power of diversity. Otherwise, the danger is that you can have a team which looks diverse but sounds the same. And that is how we see that unfortunately, women often try to be very aggressive even if they are not. They leave this feminine side even if they don't want to. They behave like men, for example, in some cases, not all cases, and think that being soft is a negative. But in reality, it is not. It is so important to bring your own qualities on the table, and that is
So
the power
true.
of diversity. So it
So
completely depends
true.
on people.
You're right. I've heard so many. One of our boss used to tell me that you have to act like a man and be assertive in order to get your team in place. And what you
You,
just said.
you won't believe it, Symbol. Yesterday, somebody told me that this woman tells me that when she joined a leadership role, she was told to cut her beautiful long hair and
Oh
have
my
it short,
God.
because everyone else was a man in at that level, and they said it'll just mean fitting in. Of course, she refused and she said, "Yeah, it is me." But these kind of things still happen, and it is
But
not India.
kudos to her. Oh, wow.
It is happening everywhere in the world.
It's happening everywhere. But kudos to her, because a lot of women end up doing that. They end up becoming that because they want to prove that point. Not just women, like people in general, they adhere to the the common law that's been set in place by a few authorities because they want to participate in. Yeah. What about you, Rajesh? What do you think?
See, at least the good part is that we are having conversation. Um, and it's such a good time wherein we have the appetite to discuss uh, different walks of life people come from. And maybe I'll give you an example. In like it was last year when BCCI came with the pay parity for women cricketers. Now that's the
Right.
bias which was prevalent since ages, right? Now, some of the biases are very visible and easy to correct, and some of the biases we are unaware of. So, some of the organizations, and for that matter, some of the leaders are unaware of certain biases and certain aspects where they've got to educate themselves or maybe aware themselves about the benefits of getting diverse workforce. And the good part is people are discussing. We are seeing some of the organizations taking some of the very progressive steps, not only pertaining to women, it's also pertaining to men. You once quoted this example of you being the only woman in the room full of men. And let me give you an example. I was heading for one of a Zumba sessions, and when I stepped inside that class, I was the only man, and there were 30 women. And I felt intimidated. And I told my trainer that, I feel somehow, I don't know whether I'll be able to run through this 1 hour class or not. So that's very much prevalent for men as well. So there's very interesting TED talk which says forgotten gender, which talks about men as well. So the point is, the conversation is not about which sex is superior, visible,
Absolutely.
not inclusive. It's about getting people together towards one common goal and creating this workforce where people have the freedom to voice their choices, freedom to stand up for who they are, what they can bring on table in terms of work capabilities. So I'm happy the conversation is happening.
So true. So true. Very aptly put. You said it's not just about a particular gender or caste or a society, but it's about a common goal where everyone has a voice and there's enough space, and we basically accept differences. And I think that's the beauty of it. Uh, so we've spoken of organizations, and like Prachi also said that the change of course starts from leaders. That's the base of, if they put that by an example, others follow. But do you think that as employees, there is a certain uh, responsibility that lies within us as well? Because in a lot of cases, a company can put together a lot of things, can have a lot of conversations, but how a classic example is the lunch groups, right, that happen. There are people sitting in the cafeteria in certain groups, and diversity and inclusion also comes from the fact of how you are dealing with your colleagues, and what kind of how inviting you are to somebody who feels that they are not a part of the group. So do you think that as employees there is a certain sense of responsibility that lies in creating an environment that's inclusive in nature?
Absolutely, Symbol. And that is why we want allies at all levels. And no, no matter how many policies and programs a company makes to get women on leadership positions, unless a woman knows how to pull a chair and get a table and get a chair for herself in the conference room, in the boardroom, nothing will happen. Unless a human being decides that I will include myself, nothing much will change outside, no matter how many policies a company makes to include everyone. We as human beings will need to include ourselves, and that really starts at home. How much time are you taking out to take care of your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health? All of that inclusion comes together, and then all the policies, environment, good things that happen to you at the workplace or outside work for you. But it starts from
So
you as a human being.
absolutely, it does. It does.
And
Us and the colleagues. Yeah, please, Rajesh. Go on.
sorry, Yeah,
No,
so
no,
I
please.
wanted to build on to something which Prachi just suggested. So the culture flows from top to bottom. Its implementation flows the vice versa. So people who are the colleagues that we work on, they've got to be the flag bearers of allyship. They've got to be welcoming, because these are the people this individual from a diverse background would come and work with. And obviously, I think that's something that I'm a very strong believer of. Whenever a new person gets onboarded in a team, when this person goes through an orientation program, I highly suggest a lot of companies should put in is build DNI 1 hour training to this person, suggesting that it's such an ethos for the company, because this person gets marinated in terms of, okay, this is the value the organization and the leaders live on to, and therefore they need to demonstrate if somebody new comes and joins his or her team. So orientation programs happens to be one of those platforms where you explicitly tell this person diversity and inclusion is such an essential part and ethos of the company's culture. So yes, absolutely. People working uh, maybe at the mid management or a junior management, in this particular bracket, they should and voice it out. Very strong advocacy for inclusion.
That's so true. That's very true. In fact, the roles that there are a lot of companies where there are certain roles given to certain employees based on either the gender or the community. So, like in ad agencies, what they do is if there's a beauty brand that you have to work on, they'll put all the women in there. And there's a cricket brief, they'll put all the men in there, right? And it may perhaps come from the fact of someone's knowledge. I completely get that, but not it shouldn't come from the perspective of someone belonging to a certain gender, and that's why you know a lot better about it. A lot of men do skincare now, makeup now, and not just men, from like people from all genders participate in that, but to assign that role to women again, I feel is something that sort of creates that divide. uh, you know Even when we would go for what do you call this, you spoke of the cricket campaign, Rajesh, last year, and what it reminded me of was that whenever in one of our company we would go for like off sites, right? So they would do cricket tournaments, but all men would participate, and for women, I'm not even joking, they gave us that a plastic ball and a plastic bat. Okay, and they gave us like a small pitch where like people sit usually to watch the game, and they're like, you guys just enjoy here. Like we were the kids that not supposed to participate. Now the men were participate, they were not. It's I'm not saying that women said no, I'm saying that they were not even given the chance to participate in that, and no one wanted them in their team because they knew that, oh, like this will be a liability, you know as opposed to like the stronger team on the other hand. So I'm just saying that these are small incidents, right? But they make you think so much about how included does one feel in an environment. And for a lot of people who don't even associate to a gender, why should they be put in a certain gender because you expect them to be there, right? So I feel that these are small things, but like as an employee, I feel that as a fellow colleague, it's the responsibility for say suppose me to feel that if you're joining my team, becoming a part of my team, I don't look at you as the other. you know Virdas, in a very beautiful, he had a beautiful one of his sessions, and where Virdas spoke of the other India, where we say that this is us and the other person is the other India. So like whoever does not align with our similarities is the other person. So that's the other India, and that's why all these fights happen from a minuscule level to a bigger level, because you look at them as the other person, and this other person must be at fault is how the narrative goes. It's a beautiful talk that he gives. But yes, so like we all agree that they do play a big role. I'll just come back to one important question before I wrap up with the, your suggestions. Is that one important question on mental health plays an important role, because and workplaces contribute a lot to a person's mental health. You end up spending a lot of time there. You can't say that you just leave the work at home, because when you come back, how your day went, with the kind of people you were with, the kind of incidences that you faced, do play a big part. So do you think that, how do you think that, the lack of diversity and inclusion um, impacts the mental health? Because it does, say, a lot of reports say that the fact that you are not, uh, your point of view is not considered. And like I said, that I kept thinking that it must be my lack of knowledge that is, that's why I'm not at a certain position, or somehow not getting that promotion as much as my colleague is. So do you think, how do you think this, it impacts the mental health of employees, and uh, in any form? To be very honest, it doesn't have to be something as big as that, they went through something, but just like a bad day, it starts from just a bad day, knowing that, I smiled at you and you didn't smile back at me. And or maybe because you think I'm different from you, something as simple as that. To what I bring for lunch, I mean, I felt this, like there were some people from the northeast, and they would get their delicacies, and it would had a certain smell, so a lot of people would like step back. Or my one of my friends is in the US, and the Chinese people, they asked my friend to, like, eat outside, because they're like, Indian food stinks and smells. And I'm saying these are big things, because they impact how you would want to, turn up to work every day. So how do you think it impacts the mental health of employees in a culture that's not supporting diversity and inclusion?
Hugely. I mean, every word basically you've responded to the whole thing, Symbol. That even a person just warmly smiling at you on a bad day makes a big difference in how you're feeling. So even somebody just looking at you with a little warmth, just saying that I hear you, I see you, I have your back, it means the world at that time, because at that time you're drowning in your pain, in the adversity that you're dealing with, the challenges that you're dealing with. And all of us have so many ups and downs, so a huge difference, because we spend a great deal of time at work, so many years at work, so many prime years of our lives is spent in office or at work. So very important to have very healthy relationships at work, people who can make you laugh, people who can make you do creative work, people who can humor you sometimes, people who can just put a hand on your shoulder and say, okay, this too shall pass. So absolutely important. But again, I would say, Symbol, that this alone also wouldn't work. If we are only dependent on people outside of us telling us that this too shall pass and I will take care of you, this alone wouldn't work. Nobody can save us from the work that we need to do ourselves on us. So we really have to take care of our own mental health as well. Everything that happens through the other is a bonus, but it's my responsibility to love myself, my responsibility to take care of myself. So the attention that we do not give to us is what we beg from others, and then life becomes a misery, because being in an expectation mode, the Symbol will take care of me and Rajesh will take care of me, it won't help. Prachi needs to take care of herself, and then the love that comes from Symbol and Rajesh is a bonus.
For sure. So beautifully put, Prachi. That's true. What do you think, Rajesh?
I think, firstly, maybe a caveat. I'm not qualified to even make a commentary on mental health. Uh, Having said that, the scars of not being included, uh, if you've been uh, put aside, and something which is uh, as preposterous as food choices, right? When people are put aside, breaks my heart. And it has severe consequences in terms of how one perceives himself or herself. I genuinely believe the validation is is self-driven and you shouldn't be seeking it out from the world. But let truth be told, everyone is not equal. And especially when we talk about some of the hardships and the struggles from people from a community like LGBTQ, where we're still fighting for the equal rights on marriage. There's still the lack of infrastructure for people with disabilities. So there's a lot of if in case as simple as uh, not getting somebody on the same table based on the food, I think we as human beings are dramatically failing, and it has severe impact on mental being of that individual. However, uh, again, I think I'm not qualified to give you some perspective in terms of how by uh, from the science perspective how it affects the mental health. But yes, it feels bad. And I've seen some of my friends, some of my uh, past colleagues, when they come from these communities and they've been uh, put to some ludicrous jokes. They've been put to uh, some very bad humor put across on the floor. It breaks my heart. But I wish it changes. And I'm glad that we are sensitizing ourselves with a lot of sessions, with a lot of conversation on mental health. I think I've recently posted up a blog on my LinkedIn where it suggests uh, on 10th of October, which was the Mental Health Day, where sick leaves should not be taken when your body is sick. Sick leaves should be taken when your mind is also sick. So
So true.
I leave you with that thought, but I hope that things change and things change for betterment.
Thank you. That's Raju. So beautifully put. And yeah, I do. We really do hope it changes. And these are the kind of conversations that we want to lead them on with. And I'm just going to, though we've covered most of it, I had a last question, and it does not have to be something big, uh, but like, what suggestions do you think that companies could make? And I don't expect us to talk about things that management can change, because we can't expect them to listen to this conversation and change that. But just for people, like you said, something beautiful and very important, Rajesh, that you said, of like the jokes, right? And people keep saying that it's said in good humor, but is it, or how is it impacting the other person? But like something you would want for the listeners to kind of feel that if they really want to be aware of this topic, they really want to help themselves out or someone else out. Sometimes they see it happening and they really want to sort of reach out to that person. Or how can anything you want to speak to them about how inclusive and diverse, how can they contribute in making the culture inclusive and diverse? And I would love for you guys to share that as the last part of this conversation, so that we, though it's a heavy topic that we've discussed, that it ends with a positive note, and people just leave away knowing that, okay, it's not the end of the world or impossible. Like Prachi said, it's the kind of small changes that you have to make.
I think companies can do a lot, and some of them are doing a lot for inclusion, for wellness of employees. And for starters, I would say that start with equipping education of people. Start with educating people, managers, leaders, all employees in the organization on how important is to be an ally to the person sitting next to you. How important it is to just be a friend, uh, just use your skills and passion to help the other, because compassion to other is also a lot of self compassion. You use your creativity, your own skills and passion to help the other. That brings a lot of meaning to your own life as well. They were, Simple, there were a lot of people from the LGBTQ plus community who came to us during COVID saying that it was very different when we were going to work because it was a safe space for us. Unfortunately, not all households are very safe for people who are from the LGBTQ plus community. So companies do have so much power that they can provide safe spaces to people. My own story, I didn't get married. I am not married. So, and I'm from my extended family, basically a lot of relatives who had a lot of problems with that. You know how it is in the society, the systemic bias that you face. It is almost like peeling off your skin because you've done something which is very different from what the society thinks is right. Not a single time have I faced bias at IBM. I work
It's
for genders, I work for working mothers, I work for parents, I work for people who have children who are autistic, all kind of things. Nobody turns around and says, what do you know of parenting or any other experience that I may not have lived. So this is the power of a corporate world. I would say that educate people, have zero tolerance for non-inclusive behavior. And unless that happens, people will keep making these jokes and get away with it. If people make jokes, I have seen at IBM, if people make such jokes, doesn't matter what their level is, next day they're out of the company. Or they're given a very, very severe, sincere, serious warning that it doesn't happen again. So their skin is in the game. So educate people. I'm not saying push inclusion down the throats of people, but non-inclusive behavior or a behavior that a joke that is made at someone else's cost should have zero tolerance, and only corporates have the power to do that.
true. So true. Zero tolerance. That's so true. And I think that shuts everyone off completely when it, like you said, when it comes from the top, that this is not something we will tolerate even one bit. That's it. There's no this or that about it. Um, that's lovely. What about you, Rajesh?
Maybe in my submission, I wanted to pick something which just Prachi spoke about, which is the societal point of view. I read somewhere where it suggested that a society that doesn't understands choices often resort to shame and non-exclusivity as a preferred choice of language and vocabulary. So it's I think it's okay to sideline the society's thought for a time being, and let's focus in terms of who we are and what kind of community we want to build around us, which is full of acceptance, full of uh, tolerance, the appetite to hold on to ambiguity. So this is the space that we wanted to create. However, in terms of the action steps, I think first, let's accept one size fit all approach doesn't work. So an exclusive or a diverse uh, uh, a policy relating to inclusivity and diversity might work for a startup, might not work for a large conglomerate. So you've got to introspect and see where you stand today as a corporate. Secondly, I think I resonate with just Prachi said education. And education starts with the leaders. So leaders need to reflect onto their own experiences and focusing on their own behavior. Acknowledgement that in all likelihood that I might be wrong and might hold my own biases. We must get out of the denial mode in order to be an inclusive leader. Let's accept we all have our biases, and it's a futile exercise to deny it. Review your talent acquisition and retention strategies. I'm in a business of talent acquisition, and when I go and I speak with my clients, it's one of the conversation that I deliberately put on table. It's a conscious effort from my side that I at least bring this, expect that we've got to focus on building a better world, in building up a better workforce, creating the space for cultural shift. Too much of rigidity brings intolerance, and you've got to create some space so that it can fit into some change that diverse workforce brings in. Small things matter: names, acknowledgement, meeting times, breaks, lunches, committees, stretch assignments. And for that matter, even the dress codes. I see a lot of organizations, they have a dress code. What if I don't resonate with a particular gender? Can we have androgynous clothing policy? So some of these aspects, we've got to consider. However, leaders need to notice who is not being included. So I think I could just go on and on, because this is something which I'm extremely passionate, and I chat with a lot of leaders on this. And yeah, I think it's a long road, but I'm glad that we are on it.
So true. It's so true that we've started the journey. And most importantly, I think we wouldn't shy away from adding just the basic, idea of being kind. Always think that if I'm speaking to you this way, would I like to be spoken to this way? And I think that's the answer that we get most of the times. And especially when leadership role, you tend to feel that the power kind of gets to you sooner or later in a lot of places, right? You tend to feel that, okay, I am at a part to sort of speak to someone in a certain way, and that's the true test of kindness in that sense, where you step back and you see that, okay, should I be speaking to somebody like that? And yes, and I think that's all the questions that we've covered. And I'm so grateful to both of you to, have this conversation, share your thoughts and valuable insights. And I don't just mean it like the words that we always read, but I truly mean it in the sense that I wanted to add a lot more perspective to this conversation and to this topic in general. And you both have added that immensely. And thank you so much for this conversation and taking out time.
Thank you very much, Simple.
But
Loved
thank
it
you. Thank you.
being here and love
Simple,
sharing.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you.